This should be more powerful than the Stafford Gambit. If you want to know why you need to stop playing the Stafford over and over, you can watch my yesterday's video, which has popped up in the card above. I'm not saying the Stafford Gambit is completely useless or whatever, but my major concern in my yesterday's video was that the Stafford arises from the major opening, the Petrov defense, which some prepared opponents may refute with a move knight to c3 defending their e4 pawn. Eric Rosen has done a great job to the extent that almost everyone now knows the Stafford Gambit. So due to its obviousness, I recommended the Busch-Gass Gambit, where you don't play knight to f6 but rather go bishop c5, ignoring white's e4 pawn and completely sacrificing your e5 pawn. The difference is this is not the Petrov defense. The game didn't start as a Russian game, so that's the main difference. So this should be a slight improvement to the Stafford. Anyways, yesterday we covered the line knight takes e5, where we sacrificed another knight, letting white to take for us to reach this position. And there are so many deadly traps that you guys don't know if you didn't watch that video. So go and watch that video after watching this one. And so in today's video, we are looking at the top plate move. As you can see in the Lichess database, bishop c4 is what most people play here. They don't take on e5 mostly. So what do you do against this? Bishop c4. Instead of playing d6, which is the top plate move, or knight c6, well, I recommend you go crazy knight f6. Well, we are just simply playing the board and kits are risky with colors reversed. Anyways, if knight takes e5 happens, we are not planning to castle short like what most unprepared black players do. The move is knight c6. Oops, that leaves the f7 pawn undefended. Well, that's the idea. So we play this like the Traxler Gambit. So white can take on f7 with his knight or his bishop. Let's start with knight takes f7, double attacking the rook and the queen. The move to remember here is bishop takes f2, an in-between move. You first of all give a check, and most of your opponents are going to take that bishop. Now that's when you go knight takes e4 check, also paving way for your queen. And as you can see in the Lichess database, king g1 is the top plate move, after which you go queen h4 immediately. Like if rook takes h8, you are simply mating on f2, queen f2 checkmate. So white has to play something here. For example, queen e2, which defends the f2 square and also pins your knight to the king. So that's the main difference with the Traxler, you guys. In the Traxler, our e-pawn would be on e5 by now. But in the Busch-Gass Gambit, we don't have a pawn on e5. So that's the major difference. So if queen e2, you simply go knight d4, attacking the queen. And if queen e3, you simply take on c2. So here you can even force a draw if you want. Just remember not to take on a1, because now white can just take your rook on h8 for free. And next they may play something like pawn to d3. Since your knight is pinned to the king, this is bad for you. So instead of taking on a1, you simply play knight d4 again. So you are the one controlling the game. It's up to you to force a draw or not. But you can also play for a win here. Queen e3, you simply go knight f5, attacking the queen. And let's say pawn to g3, white is attacking your queen. Well, you simply go queen e7 and pinning your knight on e4. And trust me, most of your unprepared opponents will take on h8 by this time, forgetting that their queen is hanging. So hope they are not going to do that. The move is queen f3 here, but you can just go pawn to d5, paving way for your light squared bishop. It should be in the game, so we don't mind sacrificing our d5 pawn if need be in both the Busch-Gass and the Traxler Gambit. So remember this. By the way, what else can you even do here? White just played queen f3, and so your knight is under attack, right? And your rook is still under attack. So you want to disconnect these two pieces. That's why you play pawn to d5. Self-explanatory stuff, because now your knight is defended by your bishop. So if they take the pawn, now you go queen c5 check. And this is a clever move, because on the next move you're going to win the bishop and also attack the knight. You're also defending all your pieces. If knight takes h8, well, white is losing, because now you can go knight h4 check, also hitting on the queen. If gh, now you go bishop h3 check. The only sensible move for white is king takes h3, but well, we have knight g5 check, which loses the queen anyways. So there's nothing much that white can do in this position. I mean, even if they take with the queen, we can still go knight g5 check. This is checked by our queen, and white will surely lose his queen. I mean, even if the king goes back to g1, well, it looks like there's no immediate way to win the white's queen, but we can simply go queen c5 check. It doesn't matter what white can do here, queen e3 or pawn to d4. The idea is just to take the free bishop and mate on the next move. So back to this position, which is similar to the Traxler Gambit position. If knight takes f7, just remember to take on f2. That's a bishop sacrifice with check, so that after king takes f2, you simply go knight takes e4 check. And that opens up many lines. By the way, even if white doesn't go king g1, and let's say they play the second most played move, king e1, well, you can simply go queen h4. That's the idea. If g3, you just take that pawn. You already know what happens after hg. You just go queen takes h1. And well, if king f2, the white queen will fall. If king e2, you simply go knight d4 check. King d3, and again, you win the free queen. And let's say if white decides to block with a bishop, well, you just simply cast a shot. Just like in the Traxler Gambit, you guys. And now you can see the problem. Anyways, so this time after knight takes e4 check, instead of king g1 or king e1, even if white plays king e3, well, that'll be like a mate in 7 from here. First of all, you rescue your queen because it was under attack. And let's say knight takes h8. Now there's a mate in 5 starting with queen f2 check. And let's say king takes e4. Then since any of these highlighted moves will not lead to check, you need pieces in order to finish off your opponent. So that's why you go pawn to d5 again. This paves way for the light squared bishop, and that's checkmate. Anyways, after knight takes f7 once again, and then you sack your bishop on f2 with check, this time your opponent may not take your bishop. They may play something like king f1 here, but well, I just recommend that you save your queen. And if white takes your rook, that's not much of a stretch because you have pawn to d5 once again. Remember, given a chance, you need to play pawn to d5 to pave way for your light squared bishop. Let's say if king takes f2 now, you can simply take the bishop, and Stockfish says position is almost equal. You are not worse. For example, rook e1, they are trying to hide their king. You got bishop g4, and now there's a problem on d1. So white may play rook e2, covering his queen, but you have knight d4, and it just keeps on getting worse. Because here you can even mate your opponent very soon. The best they can do is to give up their queen on d1. So that's what happens if white chooses not to take the bishop, but to go king f1. So once again, after bishop takes f2 check, if white doesn't take and goes king f1, just remember to save your queen. Deal done. Because next you are going to pave way for your light squared bishop and bring it into the game. I mean, like this. Okay, so back to our initial position of the Busch-Gass Gambit, where we play bishop c5 instead of knight to f6. Still looking at the bishop c4 line, the top played move where I recommended to go knight f6, sacrificing your pawn on e5 because they're going to take it. Anyways, once again, don't think of casting short in the Busch-Gass Gambit. Just go knight c6, giving up your f7 pawn, just like in the Traxler Gambit. This time, white may not take on f7 with his knight, or they may use the bishop. But after this, you can just go king f8. And now there's a problem. The bishop is under attack and the knight is also under attack. You're going to see them taking your knight first because that attacks your queen. So you go dc. And now here is the funny thing, you guys. If you look at the Lichess database, bishop b3 is by far the top played move, followed by bishop c4. Sometimes pawn e5. All of these moves are mistakes. The best white can do in this position is to go bishop h5, which they don't even play. So you have higher chances of trapping your opponents very early in the opening stage. So for example, bishop b3, well, you can just go bishop g4. That's why we always want this diagonal to be opened in most cases. That's why we sacrifice the pawn on d5 in case we run out of moves. So bishop g4 attacks the queen. The best white can do is to go pawn to f3. But guess what? Again, we sacrifice another minor piece. The thing is, white cannot take our knight because his queen will die. So they have to play something like fg. But this is equally bad because we have queen h4 check first, intending to mate. For example, after king e2, we just go queen takes g4 check. If king f1, that'll be mate in 1 after queen takes d1 check. And let's say if king e1, we still have bishop f2 check, and king f1, queen takes d1 checkmate. It doesn't even matter even if they go to d3, well, they still checkmate in 2. So the best that white can do after queen h4 check maybe is to go pawn to g3, but we don't even have to take on g3 this time. If you use your eyeballs wisely, you'll be able to see this move bishop f2 check. If king e2, you have queen takes g4 check. And if king f1, you have queen h3 check. You bring white's king closer to the center, you give another check by taking the pawn. And if king d3, you mate white in style, just like what we did last time. Anyways, so this all happened after bishop takes f7, where you go king f8, and after knight takes c6, you go dc. bishop b3 and bishop g4, f3, then you sack your knight. We saw what happened after fg. I mean, even if white plays queen e2 here, you can simply go queen h4 check. If king f1, you have knight g3 check. So they'll play king d1, but you can simply go knight f2 check. On the next move, you're going to win the rook, and this time if king f1, you have knight g3 check, which will also win the queen. If hg, you can simply mate on h1 like this. So there are these possibilities of mating your opponents very quickly in the opening stage with the Busch-Gass Gambit. So how is this different from the Traxler Gambit? Let me just show you briefly before I end this video. So in the Busch-Gass Gambit, white begins with e4, then you go e5, knight f3, and instead of playing knight to f6, you go bishop c5, and yeah, the top played move is bishop c4, where you go knight f6, allowing white to take your free pawn on e5, after which you go knight c6. So this is move 4, where we no longer have our e5 pawn. The difference is, in the Traxler Gambit, we always have a pawn on e5. White's knight usually sits on g5. For example, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, then we go knight f6, knight g5, then instead of going d5, we go bishop c5. So you can see the main difference. In the Traxler Gambit, we always have a pawn on e5, and white's knight sits on g5, just like I mentioned earlier on. So that's the major difference. So this is all for today, you guys. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If at all you did, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if at all you haven't already, and check out my courses at www.kasperchess.com. Hope to see you soon in my next video. Until next time, bye bye.